At 2 in the afternoon, Memphis International looks like an airport in decline. Quiet gates, a concourse that feels too big for the crowd inside it. Fewer than 5 million passengers a year. Less than Buffalo, less than Boise, less than a dozen cities you never thought about twice. This airport lost its airline. In 2013, Delta shut down the hub here, and Memphis went from around 300 daily flights to a fraction of that. By every measure people normally use to judge an airport, Memphis failed. Now come back at 2 in the morning, because at that hour, the runways at Memphis are busier than almost any airport on Earth. More than 150 wide-body jets have landed in a matter of hours. 13,000 people are working inside a building the size of a small city, and packages are moving through it at a rate of nearly 500,000 an hour. The airport nobody flies from is one of the most economically important airports in the world. And in August 2026, they renamed it after a man who once nearly lost the entire operation at a blackjack table in Las Vegas.
To understand Memphis, you have to start with Frederick W. Smith. Born in 1944, Yale Economics, then 2 tours in Vietnam as a Marine, platoon leader and forward air controller, awarded a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and 2 Purple Hearts. There's a famous story about him. As Yale undergraduate, he supposedly wrote a paper proposing an overnight air delivery network built around a single central hub and got a C for it. The truth is fuzzier. Smith himself said years later that he didn't actually remember the grade. Asked about it directly, his answer was basically, probably a C. That's what I usually got. The specific detail comes from a magazine profile in 1978, so treat it as legend with a real core. But the idea was real, and it was genuinely counterintuitive. Everyone else moved packages point to point, city to city, directly. Smith's insight was that if you fly everything to one central location overnight, sort it all there, and fly it back out before dawn, you can connect any city to any other city with one network instead of thousands of routes. It sounds inefficient. Fly a package from Boston to Memphis so it can get to New York? But mathematically, it's the only way to guarantee overnight delivery everywhere. Federal Express launched operations on April 17, 1973. 14 small Falcon jets, 389 employees. That first night, they delivered 186 packages. And why Memphis? Several reasons at once. It was Smith's hometown. It sits near the population center of the United States, in the Central Time Zone, which effectively buys you an extra hour of sorting time. The weather rarely closes the airport, and critically, the airport wanted him. It offered long, uncongested runways, a reported $6 million loan, and a new 9,000-foot runway. Then, the company nearly died. In the early years, burning through more than $1 million a month as fuel prices spiked, the story goes that Smith took the company's last few $1,000s to Las Vegas and won $27,000 at blackjack, covering a fuel bill. Smith later pushed back on the mythology. The company owed far more than that, and he called the winnings a drop in the bucket. But the trip happened. A founding executive wrote about it. The company survived, and it turned its own name into a verb.
What FedEx built in Memphis is genuinely difficult to comprehend at scale. The World Hub covers around 940 acres. It has 171 aircraft gates, 84 miles of conveyor belt, and according to FedEx's own numbers, it can process 484,000 packages an hour. 13,000 people work there. Here's how a night works. Starting around 10 in the evening, aircraft begin arriving from across the world. Within a few hours, more than 150 jets are on the ground. Crews unload them, often in under 30 minutes per aircraft. Everything goes into the sort. Packages are scanned, routed, and redirected across those 84 miles of belt to the right outbound aircraft. Then, the planes reload and leave before sunrise, so a package dropped in one city yesterday afternoon arrives in another city this morning. The whole global promise of overnight delivery runs through one building in Tennessee, between roughly 10 at night and 5 in the morning. And they keep making it bigger. In October 2024, FedEx opened a new automated sort building called Secondary 25, 1.3 million square feet, 4 levels, 11 more miles of conveyor, 56,000 packages an hour on its own. Then, in 2026, FedEx filed to begin building something called Hercules, a roughly $400 million 5-story, 1.6 million square foot automated facility designed for e-commerce parcels, with capacity up to 250,000 packages an hour. Construction starts this fall. It won't be fully operational until 2031. Roughly 47% of everything FedEx moves globally passes through Memphis, and about 99% of all the cargo at Memphis International belongs to one company. That's the strength. It's also the entire risk. But first, how did the passengers disappear?
Memphis wasn't always a passenger afterthought. The hub was built by Republic Airlines in the mid-80s, then inherited by Northwest, which bought Republic in 1986 for $884 million, at the time the largest merger in aviation history. Northwest ran Memphis alongside Detroit and Minneapolis for 2 decades. Delta was flying as many as 240 flights a day out of here, including a non-stop to Amsterdam. But there was a structural weakness underneath all of it. Memphis worked as a hub because Northwest needed somewhere central south to base its smaller jets, not because millions of people in Memphis wanted to fly. The local demand was thin. The airport was a sorting point for passengers in a city that couldn't fill the planes on its own. Then Delta bought Northwest, finalizing in 2010. During the merger, Delta executives repeatedly said no hubs would close. 3 years later, in June 2013, Delta announced it was closing the Memphis hub. The reasons were real. The hub wasn't profitable, fuel was expensive, and the 50-seat regional jets that fed it were economically obsolete, and Delta already had Atlanta, the largest hub on Earth, 370 miles away. Memphis was always going to lose that argument. But Tennessee politicians accused Delta of breaking its word, and the numbers were brutal. Passengers went from 11.3 million in 2007 to 4.6 million by 2013, and down to about 3.5 million by 2015. The Amsterdam flight had already ended in 2012. Memphis lost long-haul international service entirely, and it hasn't come back. Here's the part that matters, though. In 2024, Memphis handled nearly 4.9 million passengers, its best year since the hub closed. And almost every one of those people was actually going to Memphis or coming home to it. That's a smaller airport, but it's a real one.
So how important is Memphis, honestly? By cargo tonnage, it handled about 3.75 million metric tons in 2024. That makes it the busiest cargo airport in North America and 3rd busiest in the world, behind Hong Kong and Shanghai. For 18 straight years, Memphis was #1 on Earth. And it's not just the airport. Memphis is where America's freight infrastructure converges. 5 Class 1 railroads, the 5th largest inland port, 3 interstate highways, and the cargo airport. Locals call it the 4 R's: runway, river, road, and rail. The logistics industry in Metro Memphis generated around $18.9 billion in 2022 across more than 3,600 companies employing 119,000 people, the highest concentration of any American metro. Nike, Medtronic, Williams-Sonoma, and others put distribution centers near the hub specifically so they can promise later order cutoffs than competitors. And what moves through here isn't ordinary freight. It's pharmaceuticals, medical devices, semiconductors, automotive parts that shut down a factory if they're late. That's the honest case for Memphis being important, not passenger counts, supply chains. When a hospital needs a device tomorrow morning, or a factory in Ohio needs a part before the line stops, the physical answer to that problem usually passes through Memphis in the middle of the night. But there are 2 problems with that story right now.
The first problem is that FedEx is shrinking parts of itself. In September 2024, FedEx's roughly 22-year air cargo contract with the U.S. Postal Service expired, and the Postal Service handed the replacement to UPS. FedEx flagged it as a roughly $500 million headwind and permanently retired 22 Boeing 757 freighters because it no longer needed the capacity. At the same time,
FedEx has been running a restructuring program consolidating its historically separate express and ground networks, closing hundreds of stations. Memphis felt it. In 2024, Memphis was the only airport in the world's top 10 cargo airports to decline year over year. The second problem is more direct. In February 2026, a study from DePaul University found that UPS's Worldport in Louisville had overtaken Memphis as the world's largest express air cargo hub. UPS averaging around 200 peak day flights at Louisville versus roughly 165 for FedEx at Memphis. The lead researcher put it plainly. People immediately think of FedEx and Memphis, but Louisville has elbowed its way to the top. So Memphis lost the passenger crown in 2013, and in 2026, it lost the express cargo crown too. And yet, FedEx is simultaneously spending $400 million on a new sorting facility there that won't even open until 2031. That's a company hedging in both directions at once, cutting flights and pouring in concrete. Which brings us back to the name on the building. Frederick Smith died on June 21, 2025 at 80 years old. On August 11, 2026, what would have been his 82nd birthday, Memphis International officially became Frederick W. Smith International Airport. FedEx flew in a Boeing 777 painted in the original 1973 livery, operating as Flight 1944, the year he was born. His son called him the guy who put the international in Memphis International Airport. And that's exactly the paradox this airport lives inside. Memphis is not America's most important airport for people. Almost nobody flies from Memphis. But an enormous amount of what the modern economy depends on flies through it, quietly, at 2 in the morning while the terminal upstairs sits empty. It's the most important airport in America that almost nobody uses. The question now isn't whether Memphis matters, it's whether the company that made it matter still needs it as much as it used to.